Hey, y'all. Good afternoon, good day, good evening. This is Allison from Allison Knows. Hi to my allies. Hello to my know it alls. Welcome. Please like, share, and subscribe. I am making a concerted effort to be more regular, to do this more often, to share my thoughts, and to put out questions. Please, in the chat below, ask your questions, and I will make it a priority to go ahead and respond to them. Also, please be advised that the trolls that are going on, that's a lot of energy that you are expelling, but okay, it goes to show that there's something that I am talking about that irritates you to no end. If that's the case, continue what you're doing. I appreciate it. I'm sure YouTube will take care of it in their own way. I don't pull any punches. This is not for entertainment. This is for information purposes exclusively. I am going to continue sharing the information that I gathered and researched as it relates to Jeffrey Epstein and his web that Felon 45 is a part of, and that everyone is quickly having a sense of maybe an electronic or electric prod shoved up their rear end to make them finally realize what is going on. Where I stopped yesterday was talking about the art of the deal and the company you keep. Um, and I will reverse a little bit so that it can roll over. It is in excuse me, in 19 in the 1980s and 1990s, as Epstein was building his mysterious financial empire, he also cultivated something even more valuable: relationships. And nowhere was this more evident than his friendship with a brass real estate developer from Queens who was making his own mark on Manhattan's social scene, Donald Trump. Now, when we talk about the Trump Epstein relationship, we need to be precise about what we know and what we can prove. But what we do know, thanks in large part to Michael Wolff and his extraordinary reporting, paints a picture of two men whose lives become entwined in a way that would have profound implications for American politics. The friendship stretched back decades. It did. And I mean, when he says, oh, he didn't know who he was, or no, he only did this and he only did that, anytime his mouth, he, Felon 45, anytime his mouth is moving, he is lying. So these were two wealthy men who moved in the same circles, who shared similar appetites for luxury, status, beautiful women. They would fly together from New York to Palm Beach. They would party at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club. They would dine together at Epstein's Manhattan mansion. Yeah, everything together. In 2002, Trump gave an interview to the New York Magazine that would later become infamous. Quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years, Trump said. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." End of quote. On the younger side. Let that phrase sink in for a minute. This was 2002, 6 years before Epstein would be convicted on charges related to soliciting prostitution from a minor. What's a minor? A child under the age of 16. But even then, even in casual conversation, there was this acknowledgement, this wink and a nod understanding about Epstein's preferences. But here's where Michael Wolff's reporting becomes absolutely crucial to understanding this story. In 2017, as Wolff was researching what would become his explosive book, Fire and Fury, he had extensive conversations with Jeffrey Epstein, conversations that Epstein believed were for a potential biography. What Epstein didn't know was that Wolff was recording everything. Those recordings, which Wolff has described as totaling some 100 hours, provided an unprecedented window into Epstein's mind and his relationship with Trump. And what they reveal is deeply disturbing. According to Wolff, Epstein described himself as Donald's closest friend for 10 years. But more than that, Epstein provided detailed insights into Trump's character, his management style, his psychological makeup. Epstein talked about how Trump would play his advisors against each other, how he would poison relationships within his own circle, how he would operate through a combination of manipulation and intimidation. Quote, his people fight each other and then he poisons the well outside, Epstein told Wolf. He described how Trump would tell multiple people negative things about the other. Steve Bannon against Rance Priebus against Kellyanne Conway, creating an atmosphere of paranoia and competition. I never understood that. I don't understand what that brings to the table. I don't understand how that makes anything productive, but that's just me. I need to realize that reasonable thinking in this arena doesn't factor. So I won't even bother with it. But perhaps most revealing was Wolf's observation that Epstein was utterly preoccupied with Trump. Frankly, he was afraid of him. Think about that. Here's a man who had spent decades manipulating, controlling powerful people, who had built his entire life around understanding and exploiting human weaknesses. And he is afraid of Donald Trump. Why? What did Epstein know about Trump that made him fearful? What secrets did they share? What leverage did each man have over the other? Yeah, these are questions. These are very good questions. When we start asking very good questions, we eventually will get very good answers. So, the enabler. This is Ghislaine Maxwell. She fed the web of complicity. She's now serving 20 years, but I have a feeling that not only does she have a part of the list, if not all of the list, I suspect that her attorneys now are going to be able to leverage that information for her benefit, which they should, because it's time that the women stop being responsible for the actions of men, even if they're complicit or even if they contributed to it as well. If you're going to be charged for something, then all of them ought to be charged for something. And that includes the powerful people that, if memory serves me, unfortunately, includes some Democrats. It also includes a lot of Republicans. It includes justices. It includes senators. It also includes royalty. So, yeah. To understand the full scope of the Epstein operation, we need to talk about Ghislaine Maxwell, the British socialite who became Epstein's partner, enabler, and ultimately his co-conspirator in one of the most extensive sex trafficking operations in modern American history. Now, what is interesting here to me that makes me think is how many reporters out there right now are digging into this? How many reporters right now are gaining access to Ghislaine? How many reporters right now are actually getting answers to this? And as I talk about this, I consider myself a part of independent media. I figure it's more of a social commentator is how I reference myself. And I really do think that we should like, share, and support us. Hit the like button on here, please. I do want some help from you to grow my channel. I would appreciate that very much. I would appreciate the ability to be a like-minded voice on there. I do not have a journalism degree. I do not look at myself as a journalist. I do look at myself as someone that's highly intelligent and highly informed because I have a serious level of curiosity. And what I would like to know is how, when, and how soon can we think about the politics that has perversed our American culture, that has now put us in a position that we are not only looked upon across the world as less than, we have become, as a country, the other, that the MAGA party has wanted to eradicate from American history, American culture, and American everything. But I digress. Let's focus on Epstein here, and let's focus on how his behavior attracted like-minded people and how that cooperation, coalition went ahead and fed the fire that is now raging in this country. Let's see how that factors in. So let's learn a little bit about Miss Ghislaine. Um, Ghislaine Noel Marion Maxwell was born into privilege on December 25th, 1961, in France. Her father, Robert Maxwell, was a media mogul whose empire included newspapers, publishing houses, and a web of financial dealings that would ultimately prove to be fraudulent. Huh. When Robert Maxwell died under mysterious circumstances in 1991, his body was found floating near his yacht off the Canary Islands. Ghislaine inherited not just money, but a sophisticated understanding of how powerful people and operations operate, how wealth could be leveraged, and how the right connections can make almost anything possible. She moved to New York in 1991, shortly after her father's death, and quickly established herself as a fixture of Manhattan's social scene. She was charming, well connected, and possessed of that particular kind of confidence that comes from a lifetime of privilege. So she did as she did, and she was as she was to be who she is. She was also, as we now know, the perfect partner for Jeffrey Epstein's operation. Maxwell wasn't just Epstein's girlfriend or social companion. She was his recruiter, his organizer, his public face. While Epstein remained somewhat in the shadows, Maxwell was the one who moved through social elite circles, who attended charity galas and society parties, who maintained the relationship that kept Epstein's operation running. And it was Maxwell who recruited the victims, young women, often from working class backgrounds, often vulnerable in some way. She would approach them with offers of work, of opportunity, of a chance to make money. She would gain their trust, make them feel special, make them feel chosen. One of the most chilling examples of this recruitment happened right under our noses at Mar-a-Lago itself. Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who became one of Epstein's most prominent accusers before her death last year, I think it was last year, was working as a locker room attendant at Trump's resort when she was approached by Maxwell. She was 16 years old. Think about that. At the very place where Trump and Epstein socialized, where they hosted their parties and conducted their businesses, Maxwell was recruiting victims. And this wasn't happening in some dark corner of the internet or in some foreign country. This was happening at one of the most exclusive resorts in America, a place where the wealthy and powerful came to relax and network. Wow. During Maxwell's trial in 2021, we learned even more disturbing details. A woman testifying under the pseudonym Jane described how Epstein took her to meet Trump at Mar-a-Lago when she was just 14 years old. While no improper behavior was alleged against Trump in that encounter, the fact remains Epstein was bringing underage girls to meet powerful men, and those men were apparently comfortable with these introductions. Maxwell was convicted on 5 counts, including sex trafficking of a minor, and sentenced to 20 years in prison. But her conviction raises as many questions as it answers. How many other powerful people knew what was happening? How many turned a blind eye? How many were complicit? When predators collide. Now, here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. Because according to multiple sources, Trump and Epstein's friendship didn't end gradually, it ended abruptly, sometime around 2004. And the reason for this fallout tells us something important about both men. The official story, the one Trump has told repeatedly, which is the official lie, is that they had a business dispute over real estate in Palm Beach. Both men were apparently interested in the same properties, and their competition became personal. But as Michael Wolff's reporting suggests, the reality was likely more complex. Remember, these were two men who, in Wolff's words, were both driven by a need to do anything they wanted with women, dominance and submission and entertainment, end of quote. They were in many ways cut from the same cloth, wealthy, powerful men who believed that their money and their status would give them the right to take whatever they wanted. But there's a crucial difference between them, and it's a difference that many explain why their friendship ultimately couldn't survive. Trump, for all his flaws, was fundamentally a public figure. His brand, his business, his entire identity was built on being seen, being known, being famous. Epstein, on the other hand, was fundamentally branded a private figure. He got his power from operating in the shadows, from knowing secrets, from being the man who could provide access to the things that others couldn't or wouldn't. I call this a facilitator. When you have two predators operating in the same ecosystem, eventually they're going to come into some sort of conflict. And when that conflict involves men with massive egos and unlimited resources, the fallout, more than likely, should be spectacular. What we know for certain is that by 2004, the friendship was over. Trump would later claim that he, quote, had a falling out with him a long time ago, end of quote, and that he, quote, was not a fan, end of quote. But the flight logs tell a different story. According to records released during Maxwell's trial, Trump flew on Epstein's plane at least 7 times, including trips with his then wife, Marla Maples, and their daughter, Tiffany, and another trip that included his son, Eric. Now, let's think about that for a minute. That was after 2004. Even if Trump and Epstein had their falling out in 2004, Trump was still comfortable enough with Epstein to bring his children on his plane. What does that tell us about the nature of their relationship? What does it tell us about what Trump knew and when he knew it? So basically, what does it tell us about how good a lie he can tell? So we can move on to, we're almost done with the examination process. What I will say is there's a lot of things that are going on that are, not being answered. How much longer are we going to tolerate not having things answered? Is this how we want to operate? Is this what we want to just let lie, just leave alone? If there's one thing that I noticed that this particular regime is showing me as someone that is not necessarily a news junkie, but someone that is paying attention to what's going on, is how serious do we take our particular worth, value, and identity as American citizens? As a citizen, it's not that we are holding our leaders up to an immeasurable position. It's not that the standards are so high that they're out of reach. If we want to be in a place that is understandable and manageable, I think we need to hold our leaders to the same standards that we instill in our children and we expect from ourselves. About 2% of the population is military base. We are veterans, we are active duty members, and we are reservists, and we are retirees. And the thing that we know within our structure and institution is we know what's good, we know what's right, we know what's bad, and we know what's wrong. And if we do not bleed that particular honor out into our population, then we're going to have chaos, and we're going to have what we have right now, which is a complete disconnect from the will of the people. And letting things go like this is what builds on top of everything else that now has us in a position that we're in. As I said before, I'm a social commentator, and my commentary is that if we want good and we want equality and we want justification and justice, then we need to demonstrate what our red line is. I know what my red line is. Mine is to protect my family and to protect my business. And I have a strong belief in my God, and I know that the revelation is coming and it's not far. And also, I know that the entire process of how governing in America was used to it was usually slow. It was usually a tedious process. Now it has accelerated. And if you are paying attention, you will see just how fast things are starting to happen. And what I will say from the other side of myself, which is my intuition, my instinct, and my insight, what I will say is the American people, if you are not prepared and if you are not ready for it, you are about to be shocked off the very foundation that you're standing upon. And things that are going to start happening are going to feed into the topic of what I predicted for this year, which is shock, chaos, and the term of unprecedented being used a lot. And that term unprecedented being used a lot is not just going to factor in what Felon 45 is doing, it's going to factor in how we have to correct when Felon 45 is removed. And I can say this undisputedly. When Christmas rolls around this year, 2025, December 25th, we will see an empty White House. We will see a regime no longer in power. We will also see that we actually have something to be thankful for when Christmas rolls around. A lot of people will die. It's going to happen. And you may or may not believe intuitive and seeing behavior, but this regime is going to collapse under what I have taken from Lena Rodriguez, which is the death of 1,000 cuts. It is going to be the thing that collapses everything. And I can say this definitively, it has already started. It started with Luigi Mangione killing the CEO of United Health. Um, if you want to have something to measure it against, Luigi, I feel, will not be convicted. He is going to be tried. He is going to get off. And he's going to get off because, not of a technicality, but because the jurors are going to look at him and realize that he was the catalyst that started everything. And if you have questions, again, like I said, stick them in the chat. Go ahead and put them in the comments. I will go ahead and I'll answer them. But what you need to also be aware of is there are people that will see what is actual, and there are people that will refuse to see what is actual. And the ones that refuse to see what is actual will always return to the table with the, I never saw that coming. That is unprecedented. I don't understand what's going on. Well, sometimes learned behavior can be done so at your detriment. And what do I mean by that? Very simply put, if you are accustomed to being told what you're seeing and what you should expect and what's going on, and that is okay with you, that is the same knee-jerk reaction and muscle memory that your physicality, your mentality, and your spirituality is going to take on. Now, if you choose not to focus on that and actually listen to your instincts and pay attention as you should and see the forest for the trees, then the reality is going to come out and come through to what you're seeing. So I am going to finish up with the information I am disclosing, and then I will go ahead and answer any questions that you have. Thank you for hanging out for this particular version. Go ahead and wait on for the next live. Thanks. This is Allison with Allison Knows. Keep your ear to the ground, pay attention, protect each other, and realize that this is the land of the free, and it is definitely the home of the brave.